All right, guys, here we go. Gospel Fire 2019 edition. Thanks some of my sponsors. One, Evo Labs. Evo Labs products. Man, I love a couple of Evo Labs products that I like to use. I like to use their skin repair and intensive salve. Man, the skin repair is amazing for when I get like these little abrasions on my skin, and you're always worried about like whether you're going to get an infection or not, or how it's going to heal. Skin repair, Evo Labs skin repair. Go check them out, evolabs.com. And then 2, their intensive salve. Okay. Again, this is for like a little bit of soreness after I train at the end of the day. Rub it all over, especially like my upper back and my arms, then my legs. Love it. Again, evolabs.com. I do also like their Meditate. It's a CBD pen where, at the end of the night, it helps me calm down, go to sleep, especially after like intense training during the day. So those 3 products are 3 of my favorite products from Evo Labs. 1, the skin repair, 2, the intense salve, and 3, the CBD pen. The Gospel Fire also brought to you by Onnit, Onnit. Go to their website and go check out their products. Code name is Eliot. You put in Eliot, Eliot, and you will get 10% off all of your Onnit products. I personally like the Alpha Brain. That is my favorite product, and every once in a while I like to use their Shroom Tech as well. So those 2 products are my favorite from Onnit. So again, Evo Labs guys at evolabs.com and Onnit, Onnit. Check them out. Thanks for the support of the podcast from those guys, and hell yeah, let's get after it. This is former UFC fighter Eliot Marshall, and this is the Gospel of Fire, where we're going to go through the fire to learn how to live the best life possible. All right, guys, back here for another episode of the Gospel of Fire, and I have Jon Anik with me, UFC commentator, host, all-around good dude. What's up, man? How are you?
Great to be with you, man. I feel like I should be asking you questions. I should have prepped for this.
No, man, there's no prep. I do no prep, and I do no prep, and I do no editing. I don't do it well. You know, when I prep and edit, or mostly prep, I just like I get like I gotta ask this question like and I sound like an idiot. So I don't prep at all. But I'm not going on like the air talking about people and yada yada. So it's a little different. You guys do a lot of prep.
Yeah, well, I'm in it right now. The back-to-backs are pretty tough because it's 52 fighters in a span of 10 days or so, and you don't want to shortchange any of them.
You have to know about their lives and what's going on with them and where they are. Like there's a lot of prep into that. We're just going to have a fucking conversation, and
right.
I think prepped conversation goes terrible, So, and you can see that, I think, with like today's like normal media, right? Like they prepare, they know what they're going to talk about, they have their talking points, and they have to get them in 5 minutes, right? And then they got to air an ad so that they get paid.
Very well, right. And it's even more layered than that too, with producers and directives and everything else, So there's a lot of things in TV and radio that are great, and there are a lot of things that leave a little bit to be desired. But yeah, the podcast format is just, it was a space I knew I wanted to be in. And thankfully, 3.5 years ago, I jumped in because I just think it's ripe and a space that everyone kind of, who does at least what I do needs to have some sort of presence in, I
agree. And you have to, and it's just the best way to really understand what somebody thinks, we get these snidbits of like other media sometimes, and you don't really like, especially when you're talking about like tougher topics, you don't really get to hear the person's like full articulation of the opinion, like because of time or whatever. Where with the podcast, right, like long format conversation, you get a lot of just a lot of like, you get like if you say something I don't like, it's like I can be hold on, explain that more. Like that didn't make sense to me. And then you get to like think about that, right? And go, okay, this is what I'm really trying to portray here. So I like the podcast format too.
Yeah, and Joe Rogan says too, what's nice too is that when you get bored, you just say, all right, man, that was great.
Yeah,
see ya.
That's it. Yeah.
Right? Like you control the clock, right? And I've been so beholden to a clock most of my career. So yeah, needless to say, it's great.
Well, so let's talk about your career. Like, I don't know much about your career. I just know you like UFC, Jon Anik, like sitting next to Joe Rogan and on like the TV show. Like, but like where? Look, everyone started somewhere, right? And that's kind of what my podcast is about. Like everyone sees like these glory things of us on TV, but they don't see like the nitty gritty of like of the failure and the suffering and the fire that we went through to forge the swords that we now have.
Yeah, man. Well, no doubt about it. I guess for me, it's sort of like 24 years worth of stuff, right? Because thankfully at 16 or 17, I kind of knew that I wanted to work in sports media or sports journalism. And, I think I went a similar path to a lot of people. I started at a newspaper, the Metro West Daily News, covering high school girls volleyball and
what
boys
year was
wrestling.
How old were you? 16, you said, but what year was that?
I was right out of college, so probably, I'm 40 now. Fucking A, I hope we can cuss. And it was probably 2001, 2002. But what I found was that I would prefer to sort of articulate myself in a radio or television format than to be sitting on a deadline carving out copy or editing the agate page in the sports section. I think when you get to be an elite sports writer and you can determine where you're going and writing columns, but a newspaper beat didn't necessarily appeal to me. So I went back to school for broadcasting and, started in sports radio and, got a few breaks. I remember once sending out like 150 demo tapes, and thankfully the one that bit was ESPN Radio in Bristol, Connecticut, of all places. Couldn't get any bites in Montana, but somehow Bristol was interested. Went down for an audition and was there for a while. I was at ESPN all told for 6 years, but started in sports radio, eventually migrated over to TV while I was there. And the mixed martial arts stuff, really, thank God it happened the way it did. But I had a little bit of a boxing background, not as a fighter, but I hosted the Mouthpiece Boxing Show, a radio show out of Boston for 4 or 5 years. So when ESPN was looking to launch a mixed martial arts show on ESPN.com, I got an audition, I think, because I had some sort of combat sports background, at least from a media standpoint. A lot of people in that building did not. And MMA Live on ESPN.com was launched in 2008. We later took it to ESPN2. And thankfully, in 2011, when the UFC was doubling its schedule, I was, I guess, in the right place at the right time. And the UFC brought me on. And it's been 7 years since then. So a lot has happened. You certainly need breaks for sure. You just got to be ready, I think, when the opportunity comes. And I guess to whatever degree I was, and here we are.
Man, it's you said it best, right? Like you have to be ready when that break comes. And that's
right.
Just doing your homework. That's preparing. That's like sticking with it. And I think a lot of times people, we want that break to come right away. You want that break to be like, oh man, I've been doing this for 6 months. I've been grinding for 6 months. I deserve a break.
Right.
And nobody deserves anything.
For sure. I mean, isn't that ever the truth, and I think too, you talk a lot about attacking fear, and I'm always trotting out your line to my children, be scared and do it anyway.
Yes.
And I'm not scared to go on television, right? I think performance nerves are a good thing and a performance enhancer. For us, the anxiety is really in the preparation, to be honest with you. Like once the preparation's done, then you go have fun and watch fights and perform.
Sure,
but
sure.
Yeah, man, it's a crazy thing. It really is. I never wanted to be on camera. I want to be 20 pounds heavier on the radio so no one could see me. But no, it's been fun. And I'm just so thankful that I found mixed martial arts in some capacity.
Yeah, man. And
thank God.
The preparation is what kind of makes you nervous sometimes, right? Because look, if they just turned a camera on, you had to go, it's okay. It's like a fight, right? If somebody walked in my house right now, I'm sitting in my office, my kids are over there, in the other room.
Yeah.
Look, if somebody walked in, I don't get nervous to have to defend everybody. It's just
right.
It's just on. But if that same guy, if you're telling me that in 6 weeks, then I'm going to prepare and dedicate my whole life to this and put all this work in, now we just got a whole different ball game, right? That is not the same game as getting in a fight. Getting in a fight, whatever. You'll feel all that adrenaline after the fight, but in the moment, no. But
right.
Preparing and knowing it's coming, that's where you start to be like, oh fuck, man.
100%, man. And when I did the first time I called a mixed martial arts fight was in 2009. I did Bellator season 1, and I was like, dude, you got the wrong guy, right? Like, what am I doing here? But I stayed in my lane and I leaned on the skills that I brought to the table. Obviously, I was far less prepared to do that show, even in terms of the background stuff, right? I mean, it was just fly by the seat of your pants type stuff. But now the evolution of our preparation is crazy, right? I mean, I talked to 23 fighters yesterday by phone. You know, it's a huge commitment, and you don't want to miss anything or sell any of these fighters short. I think our biggest frustration as play-by-play announcers is that you literally get to 30% of your stuff. So there can be some great story, and especially in MMA, oftentimes there just aren't great windows to tell anything that really has meat or teeth. So that's our biggest challenge, right, is to fit that stuff in, especially in the three-man booth, and do right by the greatest athletes in the world.
So you talk to all the fighters now, huh?
Well, I can't say that I'll be 26 for 26, but the effort is certainly there on my end. Kevin Lee checked in very late last night when my window had sort of expired. You know, I'm basically on call on Tuesday for about 9 or 10 hours. I'm putting my kids to bed when he checked in. So Kevin Lee, the dude, what a guy, just called my cell phone 15 minutes before we started. So he would have been someone I would have had to chase down, but I have a relationship with him. So thankfully I would have been able to do that. But yeah, man, talking to Juan Adams and Chris De La Rocha, right? First fight of the night. We treat it like the 13th. Now, you got to leave room. You got to leave room, obviously, in your register to not treat that like a title fight if there's a finish or something, right? Because you have to sort of put it into the proper context. But, yeah, man, every fight. That's why this sport is so much greater than all the other ones, really, is because the first fight of the night carries such deep meaning for two people.
It's like no other sport. That's like,
yeah, man.
And, you know, it's like no other sport because, like, the third string quarterback, like, of a football team, you know, yeah, sure, he probably got some reps. Right? He got some reps that week, but he's going to sit there, like, headset on, just listening, not really doing much, yada, yada. You know, and he's got to be there and he's got to be prepared. But trust me, I know what it's like to be the undercard fighter. I didn't prepare any less than when, Shane Carwin and I fought on the same cards before. I didn't prepare any less than Shane. Like, we were doing the same fucking work. Like, he had a full-time job, and I didn't. So I might have done more work, actually, right? But that's not always the case in other sports. Like this, no matter where you are on that card, it is the biggest night of the year for you when you step into that cage.
Yeah, it really is. And it's amazing the career swing on one win and one loss, right? And I can just look at the fight card in front of me and say for Dan Hooker, right, this is the fight. He's dusted 4 guys to get a co-main event against Edson Barboza, who might be the best striker in the sport in any division, right? And this is the fight. And if he doesn't beat Edson, it's not that he can't go on to become champion, but it can amount to a 2.5 or 3 year setback, especially at 155 pounds. So the stakes for me are massive, and that's what gets me in as a stick and ball sports fan that I was my whole life, right? That's why the NFL, I think, for me will always be king, and the NBA regular season right now, even though the Celtics are great, I can do completely without, right? These fights, you know, Goldie used to say everyone's a game 7, and certainly as broadcasters we try to treat it that way.
Oh goddamn, I like that. Every fight is a game 7. That's right. That's really cool.
Well, dude, like, I mean, I hate to overstate it. Like Ken Flo on our podcast sort of thinks sometimes I overstate things and guilty as charged. And even for Barboza, right? I mean, it's like if you want to be champion, this is a must win. Now, you won't hear us reference it as a must win on air, but every fight's, you know that. I mean, essentially, they're all must wins.
Yeah, they're all must wins. What are you talking about? I mean, like, I'm not going to die, but no one's going to die when they lose Game 7 of the NBA Finals either, right? Yeah, man, it's a must win because, like, just where that can take you, and people don't. And one of the things about fighting too is you ride waves, man. You know, like if you hit a confidence wave, like you get on a roll, that shit can that can ride it out for a long time. Like I think the greatest example is like Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva, before he fought Chris Lieben, was not on a wave. He was like gonna retire. And like Big Nog talked him into one more fight. Like, come on, man. Just like I talked to Dana, he's going to give you a fight in the UFC. Right. And then what the fuck just happened? Right? What the fuck just happened after that? Like, maybe the most incredible run anybody ever went on.
Yeah, no, and you think too about a guy like Michael Bisping, right? With one eye winning a UFC middleweight championship, put himself in a position where after 25 UFC fights, it took him 25 fucking starts to get a championship fight. And if Chris Weidman wasn't injured, the whole narrative on his career changes. Well, I shouldn't say the whole narrative, right? He's still a Hall of Famer, I think based upon the longevity and he's littered across the record books, but to capstone it with a UFC middleweight championship the way he did, just incredible. But yeah, man, there's just nothing like it. And I do feel so privileged, right? I know this ain't going to go on forever, right? And I just, I'm on a contract. They can fire me at any time, right? Like I take it very seriously, maybe too seriously at times, but I treat every show like it truly could be my last because, I don't want to go do college basketball,
Yeah, man, it's the like I like to say it's like you treat it like it could be your last because it's the only show you really have. And sometimes I know for me in fighting, I did not perform my best because I couldn't find that moment. I found the moment one time in the third round of the Vera fight that I had. I found like that moment of how to just be right there, and just feel it. But that's what we need to be doing all the time. Right, we don't have anything else than the very moment we're in, and too often we're looking behind or looking ahead, and worried about and worried about what's coming ahead, or just like focusing on God, I fucking blew that in the past, and if there's anything that I think martial arts is really, really trying to teach us, right, that is way bigger than any belt or fight or championship or money you're going to win. It's that how do we just do this right now? Right? Because if you really want to be a great martial artist, if you really want to be a great fighter, you have to do the moment, right? And to give your best in the moment is a difficult thing. People don't understand what that is actually like, right? Because most people, they go to work and they get paid, and no matter how, and if they stick like right in that medium range of their job performance, like the paycheck shows up, everyone's okay with it, but like when you have a job based solely on performance, it's a little different.
Yeah, man. I think, too, what's interesting about the sport right now is that you have guys like Max Holloway and Tony Ferguson that want to prove and are ready to prove, 40-plus weeks a year that they are the best fighter in the world. They love to fight, right? And then you have other guys, and I respect this roster more than you could possibly imagine, but other guys who want to prove they're the best in the world after the most optimal 10-week training camp, having written down everything they've ingested, Right. So there's an interesting thing going on right now, right? And I think that's why you have some fighter frustration. It's like, look, I'm ready to go right now, and so it's an exciting time, I think, for the sport because I think some of these divisions are going to start to really spin forward. And we've never been at a better place. I mean, if you look up and down at this roster, the champions, right? The champions in every division have never been stronger or more talented than the UFC. So yeah, man, there's nothing like it. There's so many things that the sport's added to my life. I guess the only thing, and I'm sure you deal with this, is just the whole work-life balance. I haven't really mastered that because, like, if our fight card gets delayed 5 hours because of lightning, I can make good use of that time. And when you're in a position where you can't over-prepare, it grabs it kind of has you by the stones. And, I think as I continue to try to figure that out, I'll get to the real happy place, hopefully.
Yeah, that's always a tough one, right? Because you always feel like you can work more. For me, I know that I have to do things for Eliot. Like I have to have Eliot time, and then I do work better, and then I do dad better. I do everything better with Eliot time. And for me, my Eliot time really is just in the morning. I have to make sure that I'm up before everyone, and that I get a chance to meditate. I try to meditate for 20 minutes every day, and that's like my time where I just get to, and I think I say this on every fucking podcast, where I just get to be with God, and I don't know who God is. I don't try to define that really. Just like it's my time to be with the creator of the universe, just like breathing and saying hello and saying thank you and just like whatever happens, and that kind of just sets my day really well, So that is like, I know I need that, you know, I need that greatly. Do you have anything that like that you do for yourself to in a sense where you're like it sets Jon Anik in the right way?
Well, I certainly think exercise, you know, I certainly think that that's a big key for me in terms of my mental state. But yeah, breathing. I think as you get older, you get smarter about what breathing can do for you, right? And maybe I'll be able to get to a state that is meditation one day. But I just think deep breaths, right?
Yeah.
And it's very applicable to my job, obviously, using your diaphragm correctly, which I probably do a third of the time, right? But it's all related for me. And when I'm relaxed and having fun, obviously, I'm at my best. Joe Silva would always say, don't forget to have fun, because you know, when I'm walking to the arena, bro, like fun is the last thing on my mind, right? I have a very serious job to do, and I'm trying to, you know, get myself to a position where fun is closer to the forefront of my mind, and breathing certainly helps that initiative, you know.
Fuck, that's funny that Joe Silva told you to have fun, because that's never what he told us.
Well, yeah, well. Right.
What he told us was, you motherfuckers better fight hard.
All right.
Like that was not what he told us.
Yeah, well, no, and not to say that he would sugarcoat anything with me. If he didn't like something that I said, you know, he wasn't, you know, the leader of the league intact. Of course, we all know that. But
right.
It was interesting, yeah, that would have been the source to tell me to have fun. You know, maybe that was sort of his subtle way of telling me to loosen up a little bit, but you know, it's been an evolution over 7 years, and do you know what he's doing now?
What's Joe Silva doing now? Do we know?
He is fucking chilling, sparring in his basement. He has an octagon in his basement in Virginia, and he has family. You know, he has a stepdaughter that he's very close to, and a wife that he's overdue to spend some time with, and he's got money in the bank that's just sitting there making money for him. So good on him. You know, I just hope he can spar until he's 75 years old, because
he's taking shots to the head.
He certainly takes some body shots. Yeah, I think he's wearing headgear. You know, I think he probably. Well, you know what? I can't say that, right? Okay. I can't say that. But yeah, I mean, he certainly sustains injuries that you know, it's physical enough for sure.
Damn, fuck yeah, good for him, right? Because he for sure helped make the UFC what it is, you know.
Well, yeah, he really was the lifeblood of the business, right? I don't know that there's any greater compliment you could pay a guy. And I think Mick Maynard has done an exceptional job, and Sean Shelby carried a torch that some people didn't think he could carry, and he's done that ably and really gave him a chance to prove himself. And anyone who knows Sean is really happy that was able to happen. And Mick's a stud, so we're in good hands. But yeah, Joe is just a beast, man. I mean, we used to do matchmaker meetings with him, and just what a resource.
I am a huge fan of Mick Maynard, like for really one reason. Like, we just, you know, Neil just fought in Argentina, you know?
Right.
And it was a rough one, right? It was a rough fight. Neil got beat up pretty badly. And Mick Maynard was on the flight back with us, you know, from Argentina back to Houston. And he is arguing with Neil to take his first class seat.
Wow.
Like, he's like, no, man. Like, I'm not. You know, and Neil won't do it, you know, but like, you can see this like 5-minute like argument and conversation going on about, like, he's like, nah, man, you're going to sit here and because you're not okay. Like, you're hurt. You're like no one is okay after that fight, you know? And Mick is like, no. That's and I have never seen any, especially like we're not talking about a first class flight from like Denver to LA. It's 2 hours, right. And like, it's, you know, whatever.
Right.
We're talking about an over the night first class seat. And if you haven't flown in an over the night flight, like, the first class seat is a pod. It lays out like a bed. You can lay down. You can actually get some rest and some sleep. And Neil's a long dude, right? He's 6'2", 6'3".
Yeah.
Right.
So. What a gesture that is.
What a gesture, right? Like, you know, like, and like, who doesn't want a first class seat, right? Like, who doesn't want that for that flight? And he's like, and you know, and there was nobody else, you know, and there was other UFC people on the flight, you know, and they nobody else was offering that up for Neil, you know.
Yeah, I used to joke that in my next contract, I'm going to ask for business class seats and then business class seats for Stefan Struve in my deal as well, because the thought of that dude hopping back to coach just was enough to make me want to just, you know, pay for it myself. But yeah, no, that's I think a microcosm of what Mick is all about, and he's a true martial artist, which I know a lot of people appreciate as well. But just a real good guy, fucking handsome prick too, So no, we're happy for Mick, and we're happy to have him.
Sounds good. Yeah, man. I always I don't know, whenever I fly across the seas, for fights, I try to I generally do I do a lot of work to get a first class seat. Like I am on the phone, like kind of like moving and shaking the whole time, like before camp to get that first class seat, because I'm a big guy too, right? Like in 20 hours on that flight, like I can't imagine Stefan Struve, because I know what I feel like I'm wrecked. Like I'm wrecked on like for a couple of days. So and then depending on the result of the fight, if I do it on the way back too. So that's that's a different topic for a different day. So what I want to talk, man, what a performance by Max Holloway this weekend, right?
Dude, I mean, this is the type of performance that you go to dinner, you keep talking about it, you go back to your room and you rewatch it for us, right? And that's not always the case after 7.5 hours on a headset. What a fucking animal, right? And I just think it speaks to the fact that the sport has never been in a better way, right? This is an all-timer, and I don't know which win you want to point to as his signature win now, because he just continues to pile them up. But what Max and Tony, with these double-digit winning streaks in these particular weight classes, 45, 55, 70, just doesn't happen historically, right? So we're in a great place, and Max is obviously in a great place. I think, for almost every fighter, to a man and a woman on a roster, I always prefer them to fight up a weight class, right? So I'm definitely along Dana's lines, wanting to see him move up to 55. I think what happens, Eliot, is that fighters have a really good weight cut in what could be their final appearance in the weight class. And I'm not putting words in Max's mouth, obviously. But when Joanna Jędrzejczyk fought Tisha Torres recently, she had a great cut to 15, makes you think you want to go back down there. And I think with Max, right, this really went well. And I think that makes him want to do 45 again. And I think the Edgar fight is there. I wouldn't say the division is cleaned out. There are fighters there for him. But gosh, man, historic what he was able to do. Best round in terms of output and efficiency, I think, on the feet in UFC history, at least statistically. And taking out a guy who was undefeated like that, man, what else can you say? I'm out of superlatives.
I think what added to the all of the performance was the wonder of, was he going to be okay, right? Because they pulled him from the Conor fight. Oh, I'm sorry, the Khabib fight, which was a weight class higher because of a weight issue, right? Or I mean, I don't know if we really know, right? And then we all saw that Michael Bisping interview. Man, I have never seen an interviewer ask the interviewee, "Are you okay? Like, are you high? Are you sleeping?" Right. Like, you've never seen that. So when you watch that interview and then you hear about this concussion thing, and it's not like he got hit yesterday, right? Like that's something bigger and longer. And Brian Ortega looked like a fucking killer, right? Like nobody's done to Frankie what he did to Frankie. Like he looked like a fucking killer, and you're just wondering. And then the way that Max came out, like right away, and like nothing. Like he even took some shots in that first round. Like put his hands up, was like, see, homie, I'm good. I'm good, bro. Like you got nothing for me here. That was amazing.
It's amazing. He's got his kid sitting right next to us, Mini Blessed, on the headset, listening to everything. It's like Max knows the outcome, so he doesn't mind putting his 7-year-old, 8-year-old on a headset and having him watch the whole thing play out. He called his shot. He came over to the broadcast table and said he was going to dust him in the 4th round. Now, I know he had the benefit of the 3rd round to sort of make that call, but at the elite,
No. Hold on. The 3rd round was close. Going into the 4th, I was sitting in Kyle Kingsbury's house, and I was like,
I agree with you.
It could have been 2-1. I don't know. It could have been 3-0. Like I could see somebody giving that to Max, but if I
think that's okay.
I looked at those guys. I was like, guys, that was close, huh? Like we were all just sitting. There was a small group of us, and we were like, yeah, and they were like, yeah. I was like, if I was Max's coach right now, I would tell him it's 2-1.
Yes, for sure. But at that point, he had the data, is what I'm saying, of that 3rd round. He took Brian's best shots. That there were some Hail Marys in there, too, that did land, right? But at that point, he turned it on to such an extent that to be able to do that at the highest level, that 4th round, This is a championship fight. To come over and suggest you're going to do that and then go out and land a record-breaking number of punches and strikes. He is an absolute freak, and I know everybody wants to fight him right now, but best of luck with that guy, man. I mean, you just got to separate him from consciousness, I guess. I don't know.
Who wants to fight him? I mean, everybody wants to fight me, bro. I'm an easy fight. Nobody wants to fight that. Fuck that. Right.
Well,
I'm sure people are calling him out. He's the champion, right? But fuck, who wants to fight that guy? Man, no fucking way.
Yeah, man. And I gotta say too, just because I sorry to cut you off on your own goddamn show, but like Mark Henry watched so much film on Brian Ortega and Max Holloway because he prepared Frankie Edgar for both guys, and with all the respect he could lay at T-City's feet, he was just blown away at the discrepancy in those two guys. Right? He just saw such a big gap in skill on the feet, and everything he said, largely is the way it played out.
There's levels to this shit, right? There's levels to this shit, and Brian Ortega is at a very, very high level, but Max gets another very in there. He's add one more very, and that's the level that Max is at. That most people I don't think reach. Like he's approaching Anderson, John Jones territory. Like, with all due respect, I disagree with you. I don't think Tony Ferguson's there yet. I don't think Tony has that signature win, where Max has a couple. I think Tony Ferguson has some big wins, without a doubt, big ones. Yeah. But he still needs that signature, right? He needs something to just give a little cherry kiss on top.
Yeah, no, I absolutely think that is fair, and there have been some interesting circumstances when it comes to Tony Ferguson's legacy. I guess the reason I put him on a pedestal is because in the modern era, right, which in some ways is equivalent to the salary cap era in the NFL because it's the best the league's ever been, right, but with restrictions. For Tony Ferguson to be the first man to produce a double-digit winning streak at 155 pounds, which to me has always been the deepest division, that is saying something, But you're right. I mean, the Kevin Lee win, the Showtime Pettis win, it's not that signature win that I think his resume is missing. I agree with you there.
They're good ones, right? Man. So, God, I hate this. I don't know what. I'm sorry I even did it. Maybe I hate the comparing greatness, right? Just like I hate comparing people suffering. Like, oh, I'm suffering more than you, and look, let's just get over that. Tony Ferguson's amazing, amazing, and nothing away from the guy. He's fucking amazing. I don't want anyone to take what we're talking about right now is oh God, they're talking shit. Eliot's talking shit on Tony Ferguson. I'm not fucking talking shit on Tony Ferguson. The guy is great. I'm just putting Max a little touch ahead of him.
Oh, and I absolutely think that's fair. And for Tony to take an interim lightweight championship fight against Max Holloway, I think it's for the fans, right? And because there seems to be this little hold up at 55. No, but Khabib and Conor. So Khabib and Conor are in a holding pattern. So you have guys like Dustin Poirier, Poirier and Frankie Edgar and Ferguson. These guys want to fight. And for Max Holloway, he tried to save the pay-per-view in Brooklyn in April and fight Khabib on short notice. So he has that in him. As I mentioned earlier, 40, 45 weeks a year. He can do the 155-pound thing. He needs a few weeks, right? Because he's a guy who does get up to 190 or whatever. But you have guys like that who can save fight cards. It's of huge value. And I think for Tony, his next fight should be for the undisputed title against Khabib, right? I mean, enough is enough, but you can't convince a fighter like Tony to just sit and wait for that at that point in time, right? So, but God, if I was in his ear and in his inner circle, I would be like, dude, fight Khabib for the undisputed title, even if you got to sit for 9 months. But I'm just not sure that's in his DNA.
Yeah. What do you think? I don't like interim titles. Like Khabib just won. Right, he just won. He's probably going to hit a 6-month suspension, maybe 9. Right, maybe 9. Right. Don't put an interim title out there. I really hope they don't do that. I get it.
Well,
maybe
it's
that,
tricky.
I get maybe that gets people to buy the pay-per-view more because they see a title fight. But just as I just don't like it.
But see, if people saw it through the lens of a fighter, right? And some sort of championship opportunity, even though you're not getting pay-per-view points and it isn't necessarily financially super rewarding. But for somebody like Tony Ferguson, right, if you're Tony or you're Dustin, but let's take Tony. he can't fight unless there's some piece of gold on the line, right? He's accomplished too much. So you have to do something to pacify Tony, right? Like that I think is part of the equation too. Like, yes, maybe it helps move.
He just fought with no gold.
Well, I understand that, right? And in that instance, coming, stripped of the interim belt, came back from a huge injury. I can understand why it was a non-title fight, right? But now he just picked up where he left off and dusted Showtime like that. So the next one absolutely has to be for a title, unless you're going to guarantee the guy $2 million to show or something like that.
Then he needs to sit and wait. I agree with you. So
that's all I'm saying. Like,
yeah, I don't like the interim.
That's a part of it.
But that's his choice.
Right.
That's his choice. If he doesn't want to sit and wait a couple months, then you don't get like if I get it. He wants to go fight. He's a fighter. So then you have to fight for no gold, right? You have to fight for no belt. If you want gold, then you got to wait for the champ, because the champ is look, the champ fighting once or twice a year. That's twice a year. That's not unreasonable, right? Like, that's not like an unreasonable thing to ask from a champion. Like, to fight twice a year. Like, I think that's okay. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
So, he just fought. When was that? September? October 6th. Yeah.
So
he's going to get suspended from that date, correct? He's not going to get suspended.
Exactly.
So he's going to get a 6. Like, what did Tyson get for biting Holyfield's ear? Like 6 months or some shit, right?
Yeah.
He did not do anything worse than bite a man's ear off. Like, it wasn't good, but so he's going to get a 6-month suspension, 10 to 20% of his person. That's where we're going to be. So that's going to put him, April, May. That's reasonable. That's reasonable. We don't need an interim belt.
I absolutely agree. I think, again, if you go through a Dustin Poirier lens, you say, all right, they have their hearing in early December, and then we'll figure out what's going on at lightweight. Now, I know he had an injury, and that's another story. But then all of a sudden it goes from December 7th to January 29th, and you're Dustin, and it's like, fucking A, man, right? So that's why he goes and calls out Tony. And you're right, Dustin doesn't care about an interim belt, right? Because he doesn't have Tony's resume.
And he was never a champion. Like, Tony has a very big claim to the actual belt. Right?
100%.
So that's the only reason that you're like you were saying he has to fight for gold holds some substantial weight, but Dustin never has one. Dustin doesn't have one. He can't make a lot of noise about, like, I have to fight for the title, yada yada. Tony can make some fucking noise.
Absolutely, man. And that's why for Dustin, whether it's Conor in a rematch or the Tony fight, he just has to get that next level opponent, and he's one win away. But, dude, good times, man, at 55. Yeah. Like, you and I could just talk about one division and 5 names, and it can feel like 2 minutes for fucking 30.
No, one of the things that I did really like, getting back to the Max Holloway fight, I really enjoyed that it was stopped.
Yes.
I don't like seeing people get the fuck beat out of them. Like he was getting destroyed. And it really bothered me in Neil's fight again. Like, a lot of people saying that we should have stopped that fight, and I had to go back and watch it and be like, man, where would I have stopped it? Because people have to understand, a corner can't stop the fight in the middle of a round. You cannot do that. Like, that's the referee's job.
Well, technically, you cannot, but you certainly can throw in a towel and they will pause it, and you can do it, right? Like, you are absolutely correct on a technicality. You cannot. But if you want to stop that fight, fucking jump into the cage and save your guy.
Yes, for sure. And even rewatching it, I never, look, 20 seconds before he got knocked out, Neil, I'm talking, yeah, sure, it was obvious he was going to lose. But, you can't do that to the guy, right?
Right.
You can't do that to the guy. So when I went back and watched it, I didn't think that, if he would have come back to the corner for the 5th round, if he would have survived that barrage and took more of a beating, I don't know what we would have done. Like, that's always hindsight, because he was not walking and standing. But Neil is a comebacker as well. I mean, the beating he took from Hector Lombard to come back, the referee could have easily stopped that fight.
Right.
His fight in the Philippines, the referee could have easily stopped that fight. And and he didn't. Right. So those are hard decisions, but I think, why not seeing Brian Ortega take unnecessary damage, I was really excited for that. I hate seeing people, whether I know them, don't know them. We're not in this to hurt each other, even though we are in this to hurt each other. It's a weird dichotomy. So I was really happy with the fight that the fight got stopped.
And I'm glad you linked it to the Magny fight, right? Because you got to know your athlete, as you guys certainly did in that instance. And I think we talked about it on our show a little bit. But if you were Henner Gracie or James Lurson, right, do you stop that fight? And I think it's so much easier said than done for a corner man or woman to do that. But the only way to affect change is if people just do it, and nobody does it. No corner man does it. You know, I can't remember the last time I saw a corner man stop fighting the UFC.
Trevor Whitman did it with Nate.
Yeah, so that was
but that was one of the only times it was a great decision because Nate was done.
Yeah,
you know, and
right.
But it is hard, right? Because your fighter is not going to be happy with you. You know,
right.
Not going to be happy with you, and I can only speak from my experience with like in this last fight with Neil, like in between the third and fourth round for Neil is looking at me clear as day saying, "Let's go, Eliot, let's go." And he is with it.
Yeah.
And his eyes are, I mean, okay, he couldn't see out of the one eye because he got punched, but like he was not in like this, like, oh God, like there wasn't, you know, there was a cutman in there for a little bit of blood coming out of his nose, you know, but it wasn't like this beating that he was taking. Like he was losing. He was definitely losing. What was, look, you're educated about the sport. What was your take on that? Like, should I have stopped that fight in between the third and the fourth round?
Well,
and be honest,
I think if you want a short answer, I would say, if you want a short answer, then I would say yes.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean if I was in your position that I would have followed through with that action, right? Because if Neil says to you, the mild-mannered, great Neil Magny says to you after the fight, bro, I got, you know, a lot of comebacks on my resume. You know, I got win money in my contract. Like, don't ever fucking do that again. It's the worst day of your life right now. I'm not saying Neil would do that. He's a respectful guy. And even if he disagreed with it, he probably wouldn't make you feel super bad about it. But I just have a broader view of it in the sense that until some of these high profile cornermen like yourself, you know, aren't afraid to make that. And I'm not saying, you know, but just do that like a Trevor Whitman did that, then I just think it just never happens, you know, it never fucking happens.
So do you mind talking about it a little bit more? Is that okay? You good with it?
Of course, man.
Why? What would have made me stop? Like, look, we can't look at the fact of how bad the fourth round went, because the fourth round
right.
went really bad, right? Like, and he ended up face first on the canvas, right? Like he was barely walking. But
right.
up until that point, up like in between the third and the fourth round, he hadn't even been dropped yet.
Yeah.
Right. Like
hey,
I know, and I'm not. I really want to see like the perspective. Like I'm not trying to say that I'm right. I'm just telling you where I was coming from, you know, and like here where we go with that, right? Because I agree with you. We need more safety. Right, we need more people, like you said, like high profile cornermen stopping fights when their fighter is out of it. Right, like
right.
I am on board and 100%, but it's a hard thing, like because I'm like in the fight and I can remember.
Oh,
like,
I know, bud.
In the second round, like I turned around to Christian, or maybe I looked left. I don't know where we were sitting, and I was like, "Bro, look, the only way we win this fight is if both guys end up in the hospital." Right?
Yeah, man.
And that was the fight. Like that's where this fight was going. Like there was no way that the fight wasn't going there because just the style of the fight. And like if we don't want to do that, then we just don't fight. right? Like
yeah, man.
You know. So like there is
not a game.
It is not a game, right? It is not a game. And like it became very evident and aware that winning the fight would take a hospital trip from both guys. And that happens in fighting, right? Like that fucking happens. So I guess my question would be at like, why should I have stopped the fight? And you,
well,
please,
I would have to.
Please be critical. Please be critical. I'm okay with, because I want to do better too. You know.
Well, but my brain's not a steel trap like Joe Rogan's is, right? So I just remember watching it in the moment, taking notes for my podcast, thinking at the time that it was another one of these instances where I would have maybe liked to have seen a cornerman stop a fight. Okay. But I would have to sit down and watch it again, and maybe with you, and probably that time I would probably lean your way. But yes, I do remember as I was watching it live, not commentating, that it just seemed to be one of these instances where I wouldn't have minded seeing you guys intervene. But God, I would defer to you in every mixed martial arts conversation of all time. So far be it from me, bro.
No,
you
but
know, to
I'm
ever
in the moment,
question.
Right?
I mean,
no, I'm so attached to it though, right? Like, so this is what we have to do a little more of. Like, we have to, just in general in our lives, right? We have to sit back and like hear the voice of other people who are detached from the situation, right? Like
yeah.
If it like you just hearing me say, look, we got to go to the hospital to win this fight, like that's fucking stupid, right? And like that's fucking dumb. But in the moment, that's what it was taking, and that's the risk that every fighter takes, right? Like we know this going in that and that's why the game of fighting is so intriguing to people, because it's this life or death struggle, and we know the consequences. But like, if I told you that today when you went to your job, for you to do a good job, you like the hospital was the way it was going to have to happen, it's fucking dumb. But that's why I say just fighting in general is dumb. You know, like I try to push everyone away from fighting, and then if even my fighters, like my new fighters, like, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do this, if you keep showing up, okay, you can do this, right? You know.
Yeah,
but like, so I have to hear other people's perspectives that I respect, right? Look, I'm not going to listen to the fucking internet, right? Like, I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not going to listen to that, but I'm going to listen to Jon Anik and Kenny Florian, and you know, like, everyone wants to talk to Joe Rogan on his podcast, but he's a god, right? So like, you have to listen to these people and see what it is, you know, and get their opinions of that, and then see if you can do better yourself. So yeah, you can tell me, man. I'm
well,
you know?
Hey, I appreciate it. I think I'm so close to it though, in a different way, that I'm almost like, you know, the parent to these fighters, right? Like, I'm not at all, but it's like I get to know these men and women, so it's like I always just want to see them not get hurt, right? I think it's a very unique thing for a lot of us UFC staffers and there are staffers who do more shows than I have done, you know, but like, we do a lot of these shows, you get attached to the athletes, and I think part of that creeps into my mind a little bit, that you just don't want to see the damage. And it's honestly, bro, when I'm sitting in my bed watching this, because it's the East Coast and I can barely stay awake when Magny's fighting in a main event, but when I'm sitting home watching this, it's more reactionary and shocking than when I'm calling a fight, right? I'm just in it, and but when I'm sitting at home and I'm like, oh man, you know, it's almost like when I'm watching the NFL every other minute, I'm like, oh Jesus, fuck, man, how do you get up from that hit, you know?
Sure.
So that too played into it, I think, as well, when I was watching that fight.
Well, for sure, because you're not feeling the emotion of the arena. You know, it's hard to like look in the person's eyes, and that's all part of it. Like, my wife asked me why I didn't stop it, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of people did. So like, but it's just, yeah, man, I'm not in this to be perfect, you know. Like, so when I ask you why I should, I'm okay with as long as I didn't cause like permanent injury to Neil, like, in that, like, you know, I think it was bothering me for like a week, you know, and not so much that he lost, you know, we're gonna win, you're gonna lose, like, you fucking like, not who cares, but who cares, right? Like, you know.
Yeah, I guess the tough thing for you guys, and I hate to belabor the point, but you know, the upside to stopping a fight as a corner man, right? What is the upside is that you're doing it, to your point. You're stopping that fight because you don't want one extra shot to maybe, you know, take him to a place that he shouldn't go. But I'm saying, like, it's just so hard in that moment, right? For you, if you have another one of these moments, right? The downside of stopping it is great for you guys, right? Not only do you have to deal with your fighter being upset with you, right, but you're preventing him a chance to win the fight in his mind. It's brutal, man. Like, it's absolutely brutal. And, you know, I have a lot of respect for you guys, no matter what, for just having to make that decision and being convicted in it, you know?
Yeah, they're tough, right? Because, like, I think I had 2 fights in a row like that, like Corey Sandhagen's fight with Alcantara. Like, holy fuck. Like, his arm's popping, his face is getting pummeled. And you're like, damn, is he going to get out of this? And then he got out and just beat that dude's ass.
And he did. Yeah, right.
And all he came out with was a little bit of a broken nose, right? Like, not even. I think it was just like, I don't think it was broken. I think he had nothing. Some stitches in his eye, actually. I'm sorry. And he had to take a week off because of his elbow. So you're like that. Like, it's such a tough call, you know?
Yeah.
And
you keep doing your
but we got to do better. We all have to do better, you know? And that's kind of, You know, I always wonder how I'm going to get to this point in my podcast, but we do, because the whole point of my podcast, man, is to understand that none of us are special. We're all kind of unique. We all have this struggle that we go through in life, and we do things better with conversation, you know, and like talking to people and really getting to know someone and spending some genuine time with people and being vulnerable with them, being authentic and touching somebody else's life.
It's great. It's great. And I think MMA is such a great conduit to get to a lot of different points of conversation, right? Like even raw. For Joe Rogan, the greatest podcaster of all time, you know, launched an MMA podcast, right? Because he just likes talking about this stuff so much, right? As we all do. It's
so raw, right? Like there's no hiding in there. You know, where it's just one person against another, and it's got all these backstories, and you can't get away from it, right? Like there's no hiding of the emotion, there's no hiding of the intensity. Like it is just the slogan is, it's as real as it gets, is the truth. You know?
Yeah.
There is nothing great. There's a reason. I think Dana said it. I don't know who said it. Like, man, you put a one-on-one basketball game with Michael Jordan and LeBron James on one corner of Fifth Avenue, or like, you know, Madison Square Garden. You put like, you know, two other great sporting guys like on one corner, and then you put two bums fighting on the other corner. Everyone's going to go watch the bums fight, because there's just something about it that like we all want to see. We all want to be like, God damn, what's going to happen over there? You know, there's something about 100%. Fighting that just goddamn catches the human soul.
Oh, yeah, right. Even when you're calling a UFC fight and a fight breaks out behind you, there's an appeal, you know?
Yeah.
So it doesn't happen that often, thankfully.
Thankfully, you know? Like I can remember somehow I was delayed on the Conor Khabib fight, you know? I was in Hawaii and I was watching it on the UFC app. So, and I didn't know I was delayed, and my friend was texting me. He's like, holy shit, what the fuck? And I'm like watching it. So I'm like 20 seconds delayed. And I'm like, bro, what's the big deal? You know, what do you,
oh my God.
I'm like, what the fucking, bro? It's just about to be a rear naked choke for the end. You know, I'm like, and then and then the end happens, and you see Khabib, like, you know, he's got like 10 seconds of like, just like yelling in the cage. And I'm like, what's your deal? And then I was like, oh shit. And like, oh shit. Right. Like, you know, cause like when fights break out, they're intense.
Oh, that was crazy.
Were you there for that? Did you call that fight?
Yeah. We just, you know, you go from calling the biggest singular fight in UFC history to calling a brawl. And so I just called it until, you know, they told me not to. I don't know if that was the right move, just to sort of give it attention, you know, and eventually I think we panned up and got away from it. But yeah, man, I'm just reacting. You went from calling one fight to another.
Yeah, man. So, well, Jon, man, I really appreciate you coming on. Tell everyone where they can like reach you. I know you and Kenny have a podcast, and then like you do your own social media and things like that. So tell everyone where they can reach you.
Well, my pleasure to come on. I appreciate you having me, man. You got a great sound and a great thing going, so thank you for that. Ken, Flo, and I have the Anik Florian podcast. New episodes are out every Monday. Been going about 3.5 years, and that's about it, man. You know, I'll shout out my jiu-jitsu coach, Pahumpa, just because of this audience, even though I've only been to 6 classes. And I don't know what my jiu-jitsu future holds.
It's more than zero. It's more than zero.
And, you know, you inspire me in that capacity. But I'm going to go play basketball with my twin brother instead of going to jiu-jitsu tonight. And I hope you'll respect that.
Hey, man.
But I love you, and I appreciate
everyone's got to do their thing, right? What makes you happy a little bit, right? You got to play some basketball for sure. I get it. So
it's my Eliot time, you know.
Hell yeah, that's right. All right, man. Thanks for coming on.
Pleasure, bro. Thank you.
All right. Hey, man, I have a book coming out in February, and just kind of just about like I had a solid breakdown. I call it Breakdowns to That Spiritual Awakening. And I kind of just wrote a book about how we handle those things and how we do life a little better. So I would love to come on your guys' podcast and just kind of like spread that message and like this togetherness a little more rather than this separation, that thing that we got going on.
I love it. You just get in touch with me whenever is the timing that you want, and we'll put you on that very week.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much, and thanks for coming on. I will send you I'll send you the link and everything when it comes out, and then when this podcast comes out, and then if you could share on social media, that would be great for me too.
You got it, my man.
All right, man. I appreciate it, and enjoy the fights this weekend, bro.
Thank you, my man.
And
have
hey,
a great day, man.
I don't take any offense to you like saying like that you disagree with me. Like I want to hear that. Like,
yeah.
You know, like
I'm too much of a fucking I'm too much of a pothead to fucking remember what the hell happened. You know, I just remember that when I was laying in bed, I was like, oh, Neil, you know, but I'm a pussy too. Like I get attached to these guys, you know, it's like, so.
No, I felt that way this weekend for sure. I was like, "Oh God, please stop it! Please stop it! Please stop it!" You know,
right? Yeah.
But like in the moment, Hender's like, "No, come on, let's get your eye down," and I get that too, right? Like, so I'm not like, like it's a hard thing, right? Because like I'm not in that moment. So, but yeah, you can. Yeah. I'm always down for like actual constructive criticism from somebody I respect. So I appreciate it.
Cool, man. Well, we'll talk to you soon on our show. We'll probably ask you about that time too. So it'll be fun.
Worries. All right, man. Have a good one.
All right, buddy. Have a good day.
Bye.
You too. See you.
All right, guys, thanks for listening to this episode of The Gospel Fire. Don't forget to check me out on all of my social media at Fire Marshal 205. Again, at Fire Marshal 205. Go to my YouTube channel, Fire Marshal 01, that is, for YouTube, where you can follow. I'm making these videos 100K strong. That's the goal for the year. I want 100,000 strong listeners to the Gospel of Fire. So I'm trying to make a video a week so that you guys can follow along on my journey of how I go about my day, some things that I talk about, some things that I try to work on for myself. And then finally, don't forget my website, eliotmarshall.com, where you can get up to date with everything that has to do with me personally, the Gospel of Fire. You're going to find all about my book release, also called The Gospel of Fire, February 12th. It will be for sale on Amazon that whole week for 99 cents. So all that information at eliotmarshall.com. Thanks again for listening. Thanks to my sponsors, Evo Labs and Anik. So that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed the episode.